But that's the reality of it, that you can control your grades in school, you can control the outcome of the project at work. But life and relationships are so mystical, you cannot control it.
Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us with the girls who overthink.
With Girls Who Think, the podcast. Hi, welcome back to yet another episode of Girls Who Think, the podcast. And I'm Niharika.
And I'm Simran.
And today we've got a really juicy topic about the greatest love story that you will ever have. Of course, that topic comes from this lovely lady right here, whom, by the way, I'm just going to give the stage to because Simran, for those of you who've just joined us, is a romance fiction author. And so I'd love to know, Simran, what you think is the greatest love story one can ever have.
Wow, so it's quite contrary to what people would expect out of me. But as a romance fiction author, I would say that the greatest love story you'll ever have is with yourself.
Well, I hear a lot of bubbles burst right there.
Yeah, and I think I've come to this conclusion after a long period of experiences in my own life, reading a lot about love from a fiction standpoint and from a non-fiction standpoint. I've read romance fiction, all the love stories out there. I've written a love story. I've read extensively about what love means from a non-fiction standpoint, from the likes of All About Love by Bell Hooks and Essays in Love by Alandi Botton, the romantic philosophy and psychology and academia side of love. And I think I've come to the conclusion that ultimately it's you who has to be there, sit with yourself. Ultimately, it's you who has to sit through all the pain that you're going to face in your life. If you're really lucky, you will have a few people who will help you navigate your hard days, help you alchemize your pain into something better. But you are the one person who has to spend 100% of your waking hours with yourself. And you have to learn to accept the parts of yourself that are unlovable, see yourself, accept yourself for everything. And I want to quote one of my most favorite books here, which is called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Yeah, you know that one. There's this quote in that book which says, "It's me for me till death do us part." And I think that is just so powerful because it really makes you realize that you have to step up for yourself and you have to love yourself the most. There's no other option. There will be people who will come in, who will offer you the love that you need at some points. But I think after a certain point, it's just too much pressure. I think books and pop culture have really twisted our expectations from love. We always expect this one person to come through for us at all points. And I think that's just so unfair. And it's setting yourself up for disappointment because no one person can meet all your needs at all times.
Yeah. So romanticism has, of course, skewed our perception. I mean, there's no denying that. I mean, But this entire new chatter online about self-love, I feel like it has emerged as a very unfortunate coping mechanism. So people only talk about it when they're going through a tough phase with like a romantic partner. Nobody in like their daily lives, nobody is necessarily thinking about just self-growth. It kind of is like a sadness response of sorts, and that is like the unfortunate thing, which is why when I wrote my novel, I mean, honestly, romance fiction is a challenging genre for me. I don't think I could write it. I don't love reading romance necessarily either. Very, very few of them, yours being one of them for sure. But I remember that one of the big themes that I wanted to write about as an adventure fiction writer was my protagonist. I wanted her to have very good relationships in my novel because most relationships that one has are pretty average, above average, right? Like if you're going through like a really tough phase with somebody new in life, whether it's a platonic friendship or a romantic partner, you might put up with it for a short duration, but like eventually, if it's not a right fit, it will kind of find its way out, you know. So in my novel, I definitely wanted my protagonist to experience very good kinds of love. So there was love from her grandparent, which was almost like a parental kind of love that she had. She had her, you know, college boyfriend turned husband, that she had like a very mature relationship with. And then there was this new platonic friendship that she forms in her early 30s that, you know, holds a very different place in everybody's lives. But she had all of this. And yet, the journey that she goes on, the adventure that she goes on, she really had to, because her relationship with herself was breaking somewhere. And that was completely independent of all of these really wonderful people in her life. You know, and that also happens a lot. Like, you know, sometimes the struggle that you have or one might face really can really come from within. Until that part is kind of at least taken care of, you can't necessarily give yourself to other people. And that also, by the way, does not mean that, you know, people arrive at this point of being completely emotionally fixed till they get into a new relationship or till they form newer friendships and newer bonds as an adult. But I just think that these two aspects are completely independent of each other.
Right. What do you think about control as a coping mechanism when it comes to love, whether it's relationships with others? What do you think about our need to constantly control relationships around us?
I mean, because I know that you love the concept of feminine energy, and we've spoken a lot about it. I'm going to come back to you on that one. But one aspect that I definitely think is that this entire angle of wanting to, you know, be completely emotionally mature or really work on yourself till you get into a relationship is also a control mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? You're still trying to control yourself to the point that you can. But the fact is that as soon as there is another person involved, as soon as you open yourself up to the outer world, everything outside of yourself is going to be out of control. You know, so I mean, how much ability one has to be able to navigate the uncertain, I feel like that is a really big aspect of self growth at the end of the day. And I feel like that is a really scary part, of course, because the moment that you're in uncharted territory, there can be so much that goes a
Yeah.
different way than you imagine it to, you know.
Yeah.
But what do you think about control? I mean,
So I think as type A people, we have a very interesting relationship with control. We really want to constantly control our life. But the truth is, you can control your grades in school and you can control the outcome of a project at work. But you cannot control relationships and you cannot control life. And I think that is something a lot of type A people with anxious attachment struggle with, because control is essentially safety. Being able to predict an outcome really helps you build that safety net, and it's a survival response. Back in the day, the people who could predict threats were the ones who were able to protect themselves and their families from predators and stuff like that. So it's really just evolution, the need to control. Yeah, so I think a lot of type A people struggle with this because they're so obsessed with control, right? And
elaborate on type A again, please.
so type A are essentially people who are highly ambitious, driven, competitive, often overachievers, control freaks.
Okay.
So yeah, and I think a lot of type A people struggle with it because they're trying too hard to control. They're trying to achieve everything is like a milestone, everything is like a goal. But that's the reality of it, that you can control your grades in school, you can control the outcome of the project at work. But life and relationships are so mystical, you cannot control it. And another thing that I want to touch upon is how control is often a wounded feminine response. The true nature of feminine energy is to go with the flow, which is why water is a feminine element. Control is the opposite of flow, and when you're trying too hard to control, it's usually coming from a wounded feminine. Whether you're a woman or a man, it's coming from a wounded feminine. And that usually happens when you've been in survival mode for a really long time. You've not had the masculine structure and safety system, is when you've been in survival mode for really long. And that is when you're trying really hard to control the outcomes in your life. And you can't just surrender. Because the true nature of feminine energy is to go with the flow, is to surrender to the universe, to the masculine.
Very interesting. I mean, I, of course, always get a little nervous around the categorization of feminine energy and masculine energy, just because I feel like it's extremely it's stereotypical sometimes, and
Yeah.
I often feel like I deviate heavily from what the healed feminine energy kind of looks like, and I don't associate or identify as wounded feminine energy either. I just feel like the definition may be a lot more vast than is kind of always understood or believed. But having said that, I was also reading this really interesting book by Elaine de Bottom, which was Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person, which said that, of many other wonderful gems that that book has to offer, by the way, if that's something that interests you, you should definitely check it out. But it said love is a skill, not just an enthusiasm. But for you to build that skill with other people, how do you practice, right? How do you build any skill in life? Is I feel like that journey with yourself is so important, that understanding with yourself is so important, and that takes time. I mean, it takes time for yourself. And I feel like, which is why once you feel mentally ready, we were just talking about this, right? Like, even in terms of relationships, once you arrive at that conclusion that you're ready, you will be in a much better position to make it work with somebody who might otherwise be an average fit for you. But it doesn't take a lot to build a successful relationship with somebody once you're at that point.
Yeah.
Once you're mentally ready, and once you're open, and once you understand what you need
Yeah.
and what you're looking for. But I think that that is a really long journey.
100%. And I love the book that you quoted here, Why You Will
Yeah.
Marry the Wrong Person. I've been a big fan of Alandi Botton.
Yeah.
I've read both of his books, Essays in Love and The Course of Love. This one I'm yet to pick up, and I think it's time to pick it up.
This is your sign.
This is my sign to pick it up, because I completely resonate with the thought. You will marry the wrong person, because no matter what, no matter the best relationship that you choose or the best person that you choose for yourself, there are going to be moments where you will regret that decision, because no one person can constantly make you happy all the time. They
Oh, it
are
actually
gonna-
says that. The book actually says that. It says that you will definitely marry the wrong person, but the good news is that it's okay.
it's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
Because
matter.
The whole point of growing up is to get out of that fairy tale and realize that real life is not that exciting. It is boring, and no person can make you happy all the time.
Yeah.
Your happiness has to come from within.
Yeah.
And another human being will always disappoint you at some point or the other. It's just too much pressure to put on another human being to constantly come through for you.
Yeah.
Which is why the greatest love story you will ever have is
Yeah.
with yourself, because no matter what, you will always come through for you.
Yeah.
You have done it in the past over and over, because you are the person who can control what you do. You cannot control the environment. You cannot control what other people say or do. The only thing that's in your control is your reaction to the things that happen in your life.
Yeah.
So one of my most favorite affirmations is that I cannot wait to see what I do next, because I always come through for me.
Ooh,
And I think that just
that's
puts,
powerful.
That's so powerful, because it just puts me in that headspace of self-reliance, self-control, and not needing control and safety from the world. It's
Yeah.
just building that safety net within myself, building that self-confidence that no matter what, I will figure it out. I've done it in the past. I will
Yeah.
do it now. I will do it in the future.
Yeah.
It's me for me till death do us part, as Glennon Doyle says, and we follow.
Yeah. And we follow.
And we follow. We follow great writers.
Yeah,
of course we do.
And also, I feel like I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's been in a really long-term relationship, very, like successful marriage, everything. And I mean, even he was telling me, that it's an unfortunate expectation to want your partner to play every role. Like, your partner is not supposed to be your best friend, is not supposed to be your sibling, is not supposed to be your parent. Your partner is supposed to be your partner. And there is like a different rule. I mean, there are a different set of rules for that relationship. And of course, there might be, if you're really lucky, you might have maybe 20% of friendship in your partnership. But what is the dominant aspect of that relationship? What will determine it to be a successful relationship is a whole different set of kind of transaction, like a different set of give and take. And as long as one is clear that, you can't put that much pressure on your partner to also, be your best girlfriend, and to also be the person that you're speaking to about your skincare, and to also be the person that you're speaking to about your woes at work. I mean, it's great if you can, but the dynamics that rule that relationship are vastly different. And I feel like that for the first, it made me really sad when I heard it, because I always assumed that your partner is supposed to be, your ride into the sunset, and it's supposed to be everything, and then you can just shut off the rest of the world and it'll be fine. But then you grow up and then you realize that I would probably never be able to do that for my partner either. So, how can I kind of expect that from any one person? That's too tall an order. That's too big shoes to fill. So, So that really helps you manage your expectations. But I think that once I digested it, I feel like it's really changed my outlook on every kind of relationship, not just romantic relationships. It's changed my outlook on a lot of relationships. And I feel like it makes me better at navigating each of them, which is ultimately the only thing you can do anyway, right?
Yeah. And I love the way you said riding into the sunset, you can shut off the world once you found your person. And I think I was the same person. I used to always think that once I find my partner, once I find my guy, I don't care. The whole world can just cease to exist. And, like it's in fairy tales, that moment is just frozen in time and everything else just melts away.
Yeah.
And this one person will just take all your different parts, your insecurities, your pain, your worries, and it'll all just be alchemized into something beautiful. I always had this notion that...
I mean, we all did. I feel like that's what we grew up on. That's the ultimate goal that people have been fed, women particularly, through the stories that we've been told and through the movies we've seen. And it makes it sound like the ultimate goal for you in life. But then as you kind of grow and, kind of become a real human being, you grow into like an independent person, you realize that that's not where it ends.
Yeah. And I think that's just growing up, where you kind of realize that these fairy tales were just stories.
Yeah.
And ultimately, real life is slightly different. You have to get
just
up.
Just slightly
and,
different.
And you have to get up and, stand up for yourself and learn to first love yourself. And I think your relationship with yourself is really a mirror for all the relationships that you have in your life.
For sure.
So if you're able to love the uncomfortable parts of you, if you're able to accept your shortcomings, your insecurities, the unlovable parts of you, it just subconsciously triggers your partner or the people around you to also accept those flaws. It's ultimately how you see it and how you alchemize it.
How you alchemize it, that's
how you
key.
Alchemize it.
Yeah, but I mean, on that note, I feel like I'd love to throw it up to the listeners and kind of ask them what they feel about a topic like this, because I know it's spoken about a lot, but everybody has a different way of processing it and kind of thinking about it. And
so what's the greatest love story that you've had? We'd love for our listeners to tell us in the comments. Write to us. We can't wait to hear from you. And until then, stay tuned for the next episode of Girls Who Think, the podcast.